She did not win the lottery. She did not inherit a fortune. She did not change jobs, beg for a raise, or chase a new opportunity. And yet, money began arriving in her life in ways she could never have predicted: a refund she forgot she was owed, a client who appeared out of nowhere, a check in the mail with no explanation attached. People around her assumed something dramatic had happened. Nothing dramatic had happened. She had simply changed the words she repeated to herself every single day, until those words became the quiet architecture of her reality. This is the secret Louise Hay spent her life teaching. The universe is always listening, and it responds not to wishful thinking, but to repetition. Thoughts that are spoken again and again sink below the surface of the mind and settle into the subconscious, the part of us that quietly directs our circumstances long before we consciously notice the shift. Most people never tap into this power because they speak their fears out loud 100 times a day without realizing it. I can't afford that, money is tight, I'll never get ahead, and then wonder why scarcity keeps finding them. But what happens when someone deliberately reverses the pattern? What happens when a single sentence about abundance is repeated with intention, with feeling, with belief, 100 times, day after day? Louise Hay believed and demonstrated through her own life that this simple act could quite literally rearrange a person's financial reality. Not through manipulation. Not through luck. Through alignment. Through becoming, on the inside, the kind of person to whom money naturally flows. In the next few minutes, you will receive the exact words Louise Hay used to call an unexpected income, why repeating them matters more than just believing them once, and how to use them so that your subconscious mind has no choice but to cooperate. Stay until the end, because the 7th chapter reveals the one mistake that silently blocks most people from ever receiving what they are affirming. Louise Hay did not begin her life surrounded by abundance. She knew hardship, uncertainty, and the kind of financial fear that keeps a person awake at night doing math in their head. What changed her life was not a windfall or a stroke of luck, it was a discovery. She came to understand that the subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a thought that is repeated because it is true and a thought that is repeated because we have chosen it. Repetition is what convinces it. And once the subconscious is convinced, it begins working around the clock, behind the scenes, rearranging circumstances to match the belief. This is why affirmations were never, for Louise Hay, a feel-good slogan or a positive thinking gimmick. They were a precise tool, almost scientific in their application. She taught that the mind is like a garden, whatever seeds are planted, watered, and tended will eventually grow, whether those seeds are weeds of lack or the flowers of prosperity. Most people unknowingly water weeds their entire lives, repeating worry and complaint without realizing they are reinforcing the very conditions they wish to escape. The phrase at the center of today's video, repeated 100 times, is not a magic spell. It is a deliberate act of re-gardening the mind. 100 repetitions is enough to break the grip of old, fear-based programming and begin laying new neural and energetic pathways. It is enough to signal to the subconscious, this is the new truth we are living by now. And because the subconscious governs far more of our behavior, our intuition, and our decision-making than we consciously realize, a shift that ripples outward into real-world results, opportunities noticed that would have been missed, conversations that lead somewhere unexpected, a sense of ease that makes people want to do business with you. Unexpected income, in Louise Hay's teaching, is simply the universe's way of proving that supply is not limited to the paycheck you already expect. It is evidence that abundance exists outside the boundaries of your current plan, waiting only for permission to enter. That permission is granted internally, in the privacy of your own repeated words, long before it shows up externally as a number in your bank account. By the end of this video, you will have the phrase, the method, and the understanding needed to begin opening that door yourself, starting today, starting with your very next breath. The subconscious mind and the language of money. The subconscious mind does not reason the way the conscious mind does. It simply accepts whatever is repeated to it with enough emotional charge and consistency, treating repetition as proof of truth. Louise Hay often explained that most people are unintentional hypnotists of their own lives, murmuring scarcity to themselves so often that their inner world has no choice but to organize itself around lack. Every time the words, "I can't afford it," are spoken, even casually, they are absorbed by the subconscious as an instruction, not a complaint, and the mind quietly sets about making that instruction true. Money, in this understanding, is simply energy responding to belief, and belief is shaped far more by what is repeated than by what is occasionally, half-heartedly hoped for. This is why a single hopeful thought rarely changes anything. Hope that is not reinforced fades, while a phrase repeated 100 times begins to feel less like a wish and more like a fact. The subconscious does not distinguish between a sentence said because it is currently true and a sentence said deliberately to become true. Both are filed away as instructions for what to create next. Louise Hay taught that the body and mind are always listening to self-talk, and financial self-talk in particular shapes spending habits, the willingness to receive, and even the energy a person brings into rooms where opportunities are decided. People who experience sudden, unexpected income are often, without realizing it, people whose inner dialogue had already shifted toward openness and receptivity before the money appeared. The phrase used in this practice works precisely because it bypasses argument. Repeating a statement 100 times leaves little room for the analytical mind to interrupt with doubt each time. Understanding this principle is the foundation for everything that follows. The words are not decoration, they are direction, quietly telling the subconscious where to lead you next. The affirmation associated with this practice is simple: money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways, and its power lies precisely in its open-ended, non-restrictive phrasing. Notice that the phrase does not specify a source, an amount, or a timeline. It leaves the how entirely up to the universe, which Louise Hay considered essential, since the conscious mind often limits abundance by insisting on a particular delivery method. By including both expected and unexpected, the phrase honors the income you already anticipate while deliberately leaving a door open for income you have not yet imagined. Many people unconsciously block unexpected money because their version of abundance is narrow: only a raise, only a bonus, only a specific outcome, while this phrase removes that narrowness entirely. Louise Hay was clear that affirmations work best in the present tense, as though the desired reality is already occurring, which is why the phrase says, "comes to me," not "will come to me." Saying the phrase 100 times is not about mechanical recitation, it is about allowing the feeling of receiving to build with each repetition, so that by the 50th or 70th time, there is a genuine warmth or relief accompanying the words. Some practitioners personalize the phrase slightly, adding "easily" or "joyfully," because Louise Hay encouraged people to find the wording that felt most natural and believable to them individually. It is worth noticing how different this phrase is from a desperate plea for money. Desperation carries an energy of lack, while this affirmation carries an energy of calm expectation, which is far more effective. The repetition count of 100 is intentional and not arbitrary. It mirrors the way affirmation work was traditionally practiced as a form of scripting or imprinting, requiring volume to override years of contrary programming. Once this phrase becomes familiar, it can be spoken almost like a private mantra throughout the day, in the shower, while driving, or while falling asleep, each repetition adding another layer to the new financial identity being built. How to properly repeat the affirmation for maximum effect. Begin in a quiet moment, ideally first thing in the morning or last thing at night, when the conscious mind is most relaxed and the subconscious is most receptive to suggestion. Say the phrase aloud whenever possible, since the act of hearing your own voice affirm abundance reinforces the message through an additional sensory channel beyond silent thought. If circumstances require silence, mouthing the words or writing them by hand can be just as effective, particularly because handwriting engages a slower, more deliberate form of mental processing. Count the repetitions using fingers, beads, or tally marks rather than trying to track the number mentally, freeing the mind to focus entirely on the meaning and feeling of the words. Avoid rushing through the 100 repetitions as a chore to be finished. Louise Hay emphasized that the emotional quality behind an affirmation matters as much as the repetition itself. If doubt or resistance arises midway through a thought like, "this won't work for me," simply acknowledge it without resistance and continue repeating the phrase, allowing the new words to gradually outweigh the old doubt. Pair the spoken words with a relaxed body, unclenched jaw, soft shoulders, slow breathing, since tension in the body often mirrors and reinforces tension in belief. Some people find it helpful to place a hand over the heart or solar plexus while repeating the phrase, physically anchoring the affirmation to the body's energetic center. Consistency matters more than perfection. 100 repetitions performed daily for several weeks will outperform a single, intense session followed by abandonment. Treat the practice as a ritual rather than a transaction, not, "I say this so money appears," but, "I say this because this is who I am becoming," which keeps the energy aligned with receiving rather than demanding. Releasing the hidden beliefs that block unexpected income. Louise Hay taught that affirmations alone cannot fully succeed while contradictory beliefs remain unexamined. The new words and the old beliefs must eventually meet, and one must give way. Common hidden beliefs include, "Money is hard to come by," "I don't deserve more than I currently have," or "Wanting more money is greedy," all absorbed early in life and rarely questioned since. As the affirmation is repeated, it is normal for these old beliefs to surface, sometimes as sudden irritation, sadness, or a flicker of, "That's not true for me, this is not failure," it is the old programming being disturbed. Rather than suppressing these reactions, Louise Hay recommended naming them gently. "I notice I have a belief that I don't deserve unexpected money," which loosens the belief's grip simply by bringing it into conscious awareness. Childhood memories of financial stress in the household often resurface during this practice, and acknowledging them without dwelling in blame helps separate the past from the present moment being created. It can help to follow each affirmation session with a brief release statement, such as, "I forgive and release any belief that limits my ability to receive," allowing the discomfort to be acknowledged and let go rather than buried. Self-worth is deeply tied to financial receiving. Louise Hay often paired prosperity affirmations with self-love affirmations, since a person who does not feel worthy will subconsciously sabotage the very income they are calling in. Watch for self-sabotaging behaviors that contradict the affirmation, such as avoiding bank statements or feeling guilty when money does arrive, as these are signs that the old belief is still partially active. Each time unexpected money does appear, even something small, like a found $10 or a waived fee, acknowledge it consciously and say, "Thank you," reinforcing to the subconscious that the new belief is already working. Over time, as the repetitions continue daily, the old blocking beliefs lose their emotional charge, not because they were forced out, but because they were simply outgrown by a stronger, repeated truth. Creating the internal conditions where money wants to arrive. Louise Hay frequently described the universe as fundamentally friendly and abundant, meaning a person's task is not to force money to appear but to remove the internal resistance that keeps it at a distance. Gratitude is one of the fastest ways to soften that resistance, since appreciating what already exists signals to the subconscious that more is safe and welcome to arrive. Before beginning the daily repetitions, taking a moment to genuinely appreciate current income, however modest, sets an energetic tone of enough rather than lack, which paradoxically opens the door to more. Comparing your financial situation to others is one of the quickest ways to undercut this practice, since comparison reinforces scarcity even while the mouth is repeating words of abundance. Louise Hay encouraged treating money with respect rather than anxiety, speaking well of it, handling it calmly, and avoiding dramatic complaints about bills, since money tends to flow toward calm stewardship rather than panic. Visualization can deepen the spoken affirmation, picturing an envelope, a deposit notification, or a pleasant surprise arriving adds vividness that strengthens the subconscious imprint beyond words alone. It helps to imagine the feeling of receiving unexpected income, the lightness, the relief, the quiet smile, rather than focusing on the specific source, since the feeling is what the subconscious uses as its compass. Decluttering physical spaces, especially wallets, drawers, and financial documents, is something Louise Hay associated with decluttering the mind's relationship to money, making literal room for new abundance. Acts of generosity, even small ones, paradoxically reinforce a mindset of sufficiency. Giving from a place of trust tells the subconscious that resources are not scarce, which invites more to circulate back. The overall goal of this chapter's practices is to make the inner emotional climate so calm and receptive that unexpected income feels less like a surprise and more like a natural, expected continuation of how life already feels. Real patterns of how unexpected income tends to appear. Unexpected income rarely arrives in the form people imagine. It is far more often modest, practical, and easy to overlook unless one is paying attention with gratitude. Common forms include forgotten refunds, overlooked rebates, small inheritances, unexpected work referrals, gifts, or administrative errors that resolve in one's favor. Louise Hay taught that the universe often works through ordinary channels: a friend mentioning a job opportunity, a client returning after months of silence, a bill being lower than anticipated. Because these events can seem like coincidence, it is essential to consciously recognize them as confirmation of the affirmation's work rather than dismissing them as luck or chance. Some people notice unexpected income arriving in clusters shortly after a consistent week or two of repeating the affirmation, suggesting a cumulative threshold effect rather than an instant transaction. Others notice a change in opportunity before a change in money: new connections, new ideas, new confidence, which later translates into income once acted upon. It is common for skeptics to test the affirmation for only a few days and then conclude it doesn't work, when Louise Hay was clear that sustained repetition over weeks is what reliably shifts deep subconscious patterns. Keeping a simple log of any unexpected money, however small, helps train attention toward abundance and provides tangible evidence that reinforces continued practice. As trust in the process builds, many practitioners report a subtle shift from anxiously checking for results to calmly expecting them, which itself accelerates the frequency of unexpected income. The pattern that emerges over time is not a single dramatic event but a gradual loosening of financial tension, replaced by a quiet, steady sense that resources will appear when needed. The one mistake that silently blocks the results. The single most common mistake people make with this practice is repeating the affirmation while simultaneously holding tight, anxious attention on exactly when and how the money should arrive. This contradiction, speaking abundance while feeling impatience or desperation, sends the subconscious two conflicting messages, and the stronger emotional signal, usually the anxious one, tends to win. Louise Hay described this as trying to drive forward while keeping a foot on the brake. The affirmation moves you ahead, but underlying anxiety holds the result at bay. The fix is not to stop wanting the money, but to separate the wanting from the watching. Repeat the phrase, then release attachment to the outcome, trusting the subconscious to handle the timing. Another version of this mistake is affirming abundance for 10 minutes and then spending the rest of the day complaining about expenses, which quietly cancels out much of the earlier repetition. Consistency of belief throughout the day matters more than people realize. The 100 repetitions are most powerful when they reflect the overall emotional tone of daily life, not an isolated exercise contradicted by everything else said and felt. Checking bank accounts obsessively, out of fear rather than curiosity, reinforces the very lack-based attention the practice is designed to dissolve, so Louise Hay suggested checking from a place of calm expectation instead. Comparing this week's results to last week's, or to someone else's experience, introduces impatience and judgment, both of which are subtle forms of doubt that slow the process down. The remedy for nearly every blockage in this work is the same: return to the repetition, return to the feeling of already having enough, and release the need to control exactly how or when more arrives. Those who avoid this single mistake, the anxious grip on outcome, tend to be the ones who notice unexpected income arriving steadily, not because they tried harder, but because they finally let the words work undisturbed. Louise Hay's life work was never about chasing money for its own sake. It was about restoring a person's natural relationship with abundance, one that fear and old conditioning had quietly disrupted over years. The affirmation at the center of this video, "Money comes to me in expected and unexpected ways," is simple by design, but its simplicity is exactly what allows it to bypass resistance and speak directly to the subconscious mind, the part of you that has been running the show all along without your full awareness. Repeating this phrase 100 times is not a test of patience or a strange ritual performed for its own sake. It is a deliberate act of re-education, gently overriding years of scarcity-based thinking with a calmer, more spacious belief in what is possible. Each repetition is a small vote cast for a different financial reality, and like any consistent practice, its power compounds far more in week 3 or 4 than it ever does on day 1. The mistake to avoid, as you now know, is gripping the outcome too tightly. Speak the words, then release them, trusting that the universe handles logistics far better than the anxious mind ever could. If this video resonated with you, consider beginning tonight, before sleep, with your first set of 100 repetitions, spoken slowly and with as much warmth as you can gather. Notice what surfaces, release what no longer serves you, and stay open to the small, ordinary ways abundance tends to knock before it ever announces itself loudly. Subscribe to this channel for more of Louise Hay's teachings on prosperity, self-worth, and the quiet power of repeated words, and share this video with someone who could use a reminder that the door to unexpected income is open from the inside, one sentence at a time.